When the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, and you want to smile but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but do not ever quit.
Bismillah, Assalamu alaikum, peace be with you. Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk. I'm your moderator, Omar Dunlap, and today we're discussing the topic of respecting the land, the environment, and so on, and how to deal with those topics from the Quran and the Sunnah. We have with us Sheikh Omar Amanet. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
And we have with us a new guest in the audience, Brother Ayman Ahmed. And you spent many years in the United States all your life, and you just come to Egypt a few years ago.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so what do you think? You have both views now. You have the views of America and the view of Egypt. So how does that help you understand the importance of respecting the land?
Bismillah. You know, in America, in the countries in the West, they respect the land a lot, you know. When you throw a little styrofoam cup, like what happened to my brother, he threw a little styrofoam cup and he got charged for a few $100s actually. And the problem in Muslim countries today is, like here in Egypt, is the garbage, you know, on the street. There's too much people throwing away trash and stuff. And as the Sheikh said, Allah gave us this world. He gave us it as a man that we should respect it, you know?
Because I remember I was riding around in the States with an Egypt. Well, first of all, we should mention we can't paint all the Egyptians with one brush. Because I was riding in the street with an Egyptian. I'm the American and he's the Egyptian. And this was in America. And I was, had some soft drink. And we're driving down the street and I rolled down the window just to pour the drink out. Not the can or anything, just the drink. And I brought it back in and he's looking at me like I just, slapped somebody. And I said, what's the deal? He said, a Muslim doesn't do this. And this is, I was first learning about Islam,
Well, can I tell you something?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm a little bit older than you guys. When I was growing up in the 60s, America was a lot different. And it was common for us to throw litter on the streets. In fact, the sides of the roads were filled with litter. And it was actually the First Lady, the President's wife, Lady Bird Johnson, that time, who was a wonderful lady from Texas. And she started the anti-littering campaign, keeping our highways clean. And it was basically decades of education and also punishing people by threatening them with a ticket that they're breaking law, that changed people's habits. And so people aren't made of rock. We are very soft and pliant, and you can be changed by education. And of course, if you're committing a crime and there's a possibility of punishment. But the problem is when we don't have respect for individuals and we don't see ourselves as responsible. We see other people commit crimes and they get away with it. So we think, then why should I care? And so we get this ambivalent attitude because we don't realize it's part of our religion. So even if nobody is looking, and even if there's no punishment from the government, we should still care about Allah's earth.
So then what role, we'll direct this towards our younger participant here. What role then does parenting come into play? Should the parents be teaching their children, don't throw trash on the street?
Well, I think that, if the parents raise their kids the Islamic way, they should always teach your kids that everything you do, you will see it again, in the akhirah. And that's, part of that is, throwing trash on the floor and stuff like that. Because most of the time, the kids, when they grow up, they imitate their parents, how they saw them little kids.
What do you think, Sheikh Omar? We should be telling our kids about this subject?
Yeah, I think, as I said before, education, and of course that starts in home, and being a good example, and being conscientious. And, the earth is where all of us came from. Allah created us out of the earth, and all of us going back into the earth. And so it's an essential part of our lives. And it's a home that was created for Allah, for our benefit, and respecting it is respecting our creation by our Creator.
All right, Sheikh Omar, I have a more of a philosophical question for you here. We know that in the Quran, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is described as the mercy to all the worlds. Would we say that extends beyond humankind? Does that include like plants and animals and so on? And if so, in what way is He the mercy to them?
Wow, subhanAllah. That is, of course, that is applying to the rahmah of the risala, or that Allah has sent him with a message that is providing salvation. If you accept his message, you will be rewarded with paradise and forgiveness. So that in itself is for human being and jinn, which are spirits who have volition. That is, they have choice. They can choose Islam or reject it. They can choose to obey or disobey directly. But of course, since the Prophet commanded us human beings to be responsible and to treat the environment, animals, and plants with respect and be merciful for them, and he showed us mercy. For example, we're not allowed, if we kill an animal, we have to kill it well. We have to do it well. If we slaughter it, we have to do it in a merciful way, killing it with something very sharp so it doesn't feel pain, not even showing it the knife so that it will, as the Prophet said, die twice. You can't torture animals or harm them in any way. The only way we're allowed to just kill an animal is if we need to, need it for our own food or clothing or something that's a threat to human life or a threat to human health. And so it is rahmah in the fact that Allah in the Quran and the Prophet in his example taught us to be merciful to those creatures, inshallah.
Adding to Sheikh Omar's comments about torturing the animals and, people torturing animal rights activists, today watching this, Islam had animal rights before anything else. SubhanAllah.
Yeah, this is an interesting point, because I'm glad we touched on this topic of animals, because there's actually a movement that I recently read about through various news articles in the UK. Apparently KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken, which is from our neck of the woods, we're all Southern Americans here. That restaurant chain comes, we're familiar with that. They've opened a chain of halal, or they're about to open a chain of halal restaurants in Europe, and particularly in the UK. And there's actually a movement against that. And the argument that they had is they said that Islamic slaughtering practices were actually cruel. And they said that our practices are better because we stun the chicken and kill them while they're knocked out. This is what they say.
And it's actually the opposite of that. And actually they did studies of that, and they hooked them up to the what is called the EKG. And when they are slaughtered correctly with a sharp blade, they instantly flatline. They don't register anything. But when they are stunned, then they register pain. They feel it all. Even though they're unconscious, it's registering in their brain. And so I think the Islamic way is definitely the humane way to eat meat. And Islam doesn't command us to be vegetarians, but it commands us to be respectful of animals and eat, for food. We don't hunt them for enjoyment, and we're not allowed to hunt them into extinction, and they must be protected, and they have rights.
Like what, for example? What are some of the animals' rights?
Animals that are in our care have the right to be fed and sheltered and protected, and their lives are respected unless they're of a danger to human beings or cause bad health to human beings. You don't have the right to kill it just needlessly. You're not allowed to just hunt animals and leave them lying there. You hunt them for...
Also, we can't overburden them. Like if we have an animal that we...
Well, of course, yes. They used to, for example, when they ride the camel, instead of two people riding it, they would take turns. One person walking, other person riding. And so, not overburdening it, not beating it, not being cruel to it in any way, and caring for its health and safety.
And all of this is clearly, because some non-Muslims might be watching, they might be shocked to know that all of this is clearly mentioned in Quran and Hadith.
Oh, yeah, and in the most authentic sources, too. And it was something that was, not necessarily part of that culture. It was what was taught by the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, to us as an example. And he was definitely a pioneer in the understanding of animal rights, ecology or environmentalism, and preservation of natural resources. All of those, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was not centuries, millennia ahead of people.
Right. Okay, what about corporate pollution? This is a problem in America, particularly. Not just in America, but, something that's talked about a lot there with increasing,
When you talk about corporate, you mean corporations.
Yeah.
The thing is, there's an idea in capitalism, basically, that we all have the right to earn our money and manufacture. And Islam, of course, gives everybody the right to earn money on conditions. Of course, not harming people directly or indirectly, resulting in harming them through negligence. And all of those are Islamically considered not only sins, but crimes. But in Islam, societies have rights to certain resources that are the need for everyone. And so, for example, energy. Like, for example, energy in Islam is basic necessities are considered the right of all the people. So everyone in the world should have a minimum access to energy. So the poor should have an access to energy, perhaps lower cost. So the wealthy in Islam, corporations and governments have a responsibility toward people who are in need. And so we do have a responsibility, all of us. And so corporations and governments and societies have to help each other. It's not that, well, I just happen to be sitting on this land full of oil or coal or other wealth, and then I can prevent anybody else from enjoying the benefits of that, and I take it all for myself.
So if there was a company, for example, and let's say it was dumping chemicals into a river, for sure the people that were responsible, that would be considered a sin.
It would be a sin, but it's also a crime. That means it's a crime against the society, and it can be punished by courts if there's evidence that what they did was negligent or harmful, or they had any reason to believe it might be harmful to somebody when they did it.
And this is according to Western law or Sharia?
No, toward Islamic law. I mean, Islamic law has principles that can be applied in these situations.
And we're talking about the ideal Islamic ruling system.
Yeah, but you don't have to have an ideal system. Of course, an ideal system means if you applied Islam absolutely in every way, ideally, that would be wonderful. But in fact, you can take this guidance in any society, and it will benefit. If you apply, you may not get the entire benefit, but applying some of these principles would definitely benefit you. Even a non-Muslim society would be in benefit to apply those principles.
Now, we can't paint all Muslims with one brush. For sure, there are Muslims who are very strong in doing things for the environment and so on. But I think we would agree that as a whole, maybe Muslims, we could do more. Okay, very good. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back, inshallah, so don't go anywhere. You're watching Let's Talk. Bismillah, assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Let's Talk. Today we're discussing the topic of respecting the land. It's been a very beneficial episode so far. So I want to ask Brother Ayman, since he's our guest in this episode, why do you think Muslims have regressed? Why are we not doing as much as we could?
Well, I think it's the lack of motivation, because, Western ideologies has influenced a lot of Islamic countries. If you go outside, you see, you see McDonald's cup, maybe on the ground, or you see, women wearing tight clothes, which is not Islamic at all. If you go back to our basic Islamic principles, inshallah, the whole Muslim Ummah would become better, would become, on top like we once used to be, and that, that's the best thing.
What do you think about that, Sheikh Omar?
Well, to be fair, I think a lot of ideas have been imported. For example, we imitate sometimes the bad parts of, say, so-called Western culture, and we don't take a lot of the good parts. The good parts, like individual responsibility, being responsible citizens, is a very good concept. It's an Islamic concept that is being ignored in many Muslim areas. While a bad concept like consumerism, which is wasting resources, just, living to consume the resources. The whole world can't imitate America because we consume the majority of the resources in the world. If there are other people imitated us, the whole world would be destroyed.
Yeah.
So you need to imitate the good of every society. So when the Sahaba and the early Muslims went and spread out on the earth, they didn't destroy those civilizations and cultures. They embraced all the good, the knowledge and science and good parts of those cultures. And whatever was harmful or bad, they eliminated those aspects. So we need to look at everything, East or West, whatever civilization, science, and culture brings us, and examine it in light of the Quran and Sunnah. And basically, what is halal or permitted in Islam is what is healthy and beneficial for humanity in the end, and what is haram or forbidden is what is harmful or unhealthy for people in the end. And that would solve many, many of our problems.
Very good. I'm not really a fan personally. Maybe you guys will have a different opinion. But I'm not a big fan of the things should change from top to bottom idea. I don't think we should say the government should be perfect and then we'll be perfect. I think because that takes the burden off of the individual to do the right thing. So what advice can we give to an individual person who wants to do more for the environment? What can we tell him? We'll start with you, Sheikh, and then we'll go to Brother Ayman.
Well, there is a problem, which is if you have a society where there institutionalized corruption, there's a feeling of lack of individual responsibility in those societies. So we have to tell people, no, you still are responsible. You can't imitate and follow leaders when they are haram. Whoever will whoever will lead people in a good practice will get the reward of all people who imitate them. And if you lead people in a bad practice, you will be getting the punishment of those people who are imitating what you do. So every one of us, first of all, is responsible for our own selves. And kulkum ra'in, every one of you is as a shepherd or leader for somebody. And every one of you is mas'ulun. You are responsible for those underneath you. It might be your children, it might be your students, it might be people just observing you and imitating you, learning from you. So we have to have that idea. The idea of mas'uliyah is the fundamental Islamic idea, that it's not the group that is responsible, the ashira or qabila, or the tribe or clan, it's the individual who's responsible on the Day of Judgment. And on the Day of Judgment, you will be asked by Allah about yourself. You won't be asked about the president or king or any other person.
Okay. We're running out of time, so quickly give us your take.
Well, I think it starts with yourself, you know. You have to try to change yourself as much as possible, you know. And then you should advise your family and the people around you, because one person can't change the world. One person can't solve the global warming crisis, you know, even though it's just a theory. One person can't clean up, you know, the whole world, you know. So you should try your best, because at the end you're going to get reward for it. No one else.
Very good. Sheikh Omar, I want to ask this question. We don't have a lot of time, but I really want to put this one in here. There's a phobia that some Muslims have. I mean, we've touched on animal rights and plant rights and everything. There's a phobia that some of us have that if an animal is haram to have as a pet or eat it, then we should be cruel to it. You know, for example, if we see a dog, it's okay to kick it because, you know, they're dirty. Or if we see a pig, we can torture them for fun. You know, so maybe they have this psychology. What does Islam say about that?
No, and of course, specific, like I gave an early example about dogs and being kind to dogs, and that is a good deed. And of course, harming them is a bad deed. And those animals aren't forbidden for all purposes. For example, like a dog is allowed in Islam for hunting or for guarding property. They do have legitimate uses. And of course, those dogs are being bred by people. They're not wild creatures. If they're a wild creature, they're threatening people, then they can be, you know,
for safety.
Killed for safety purposes.
But we can't just torture them.
No, torturing an animal is cruelty. The people who torture animals in this life are going to, you know, receive punishment by Allah.
They'll be in trouble. So we should respect all the life, inshallah, as long as it's not a threat.
Inshallah.
But in this last little section, we're going to take it to the audience and see if they have any questions for us. Go ahead.
What, in your opinion, what are the practical steps which are supposed to be taken for employing this value of respecting the land in our Arab countries and our culture? Thank you.
Okay, I think that was for both of you. So we'll start with him and then we'll go.
Well, like, you know, on a huge scale of a country, it has to have leadership from the leaders of the country, the government, political leadership, religious leadership, educational leadership. Like I told you, in America, when I was a youth, it wasn't much different than some places are today. And littering was a big problem. And it took a lot of time to change. You know, most people used to smoke when I was a kid. Everywhere you smoked. Now, very few people smoke. You know, these things take a long time. But it has to be a decision made by the concerned leadership of the country. As individuals, we can all have an effect, as Brother Ayman was saying. Every one of us can have an effect. We don't know. By myself, I might not, but I can talk to people. And together we can all work to remind our classmates, our neighbors, our relatives and friends. And you don't know how big an effect that might have.
Very good. What do you think, Brother Ayman?
Well, I think that it starts with the government. I also think it starts with the government also, because I think there should be a system in place that collects the garbage. And I think that governments of the Arab countries should invest money into the system and make garbage cans and garbage trucks, you know, to pick up and put it in a specified location.
That surely wouldn't be a waste of money, would it? Okay, another question?
I don't think that surrounding circumstances nowadays help us to respect the land. I mean, there's no enough trash cans in the streets, and also the mass media is not active enough to show the people how to respect the land, how to respect the environment. Thank you.
Yeah, and once again, what the media is giving us is this false picture of the life of parties and playing, that they have taken from other countries' media and other societies, which is not a true picture. And they're not giving us a lot of the good values. So, for example, in the United States, not to be praising that one country, but in the United States, for example, every broadcast outlet has to give some public service time where there's educational things to talk people, which is free, which they don't get any money for, to educate people about important issues. So I think there are a lot of things, that's not necessarily the government, but it's just our attitude of just looking at the non-serious aspect and not looking at some of the serious benefit we can get from broadcasting, for example, television and internet. There's no excuse for ignorance today.
I think this is just a comment, not a question, but I think it's important for us all to realize that we're doing something now. I mean, we're here, we're talking, we're discussing this issue, and who knows how many, hopefully millions of people will see this, inshallah. So I think this is a good start. So anyone who's listening can take our advice, inshallah, and then you'd be surprised at how quickly things change, I have a philosophy, it's very similar to the Nike shoes, just do it. If it's good advice, man, just do it, that's it.
I think it's copyrighted.
Yeah, started by... Oh no, might be in trouble now. Anyway, I have a question now. What would we say to a Muslim who, let's say he buys a piece of candy, right? And he says, it's just a small piece of trash from this piece of candy. It's not a big deal. It's just this small thing, and, it's not going to cause any harm. What would we say to him?
Well, as the Prophet said, you should never belittle any good deed. La tahquru. Don't belittle any small good deed that you might do that will be a reward from you by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so any small thing that you do that's good, you might think it's little, but to Allah it might be very big. And then you do a bad thing, you think, oh, that's very little, but it may be very significant to Allah Almighty. And so you shouldn't think, and you shouldn't be judging of that. Every opportunity you have to do something good and to avoid evil. And so anytime you make a choice to do the right thing, you're actually doing a good deed, and you're rewarded for that, inshallah.
What do you think, Brother Ahmed?
Well, I think that we should inform our little kids, so the habit of continuously doing it, we should tell them why they should not throw this piece of garbage on the street. We should inform them, because we should inform them that Allah gave this land not to put garbage on it, but to grow things from it, and yeah.
And don't forget to multiply everything you do by 80 million other people in your country. It ends up being a lot.
Yeah, that would be nice. This is important. Every little good deed that we do, if we do it and someone sees it and they act on it and so on, it's contagious. And who knows, you could come with Yawm al-Qiyamah with 80 million pieces of trash that were not thrown on the street as good deeds, right? Inshallah. And that would be wonderful, inshallah. It would be great news. Well, I guess that's all the time we have for today, so inshallah we're going to wrap up the show now. We hope to see you next time, inshallah. Until then, I'm your moderator, Omar Dunlap, wishing you peace. Assalamu alaikum.
When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, and you want to smile, but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit.